How much would you pay for this? Any takers? $5. Who said $5? $5 right here. How much? Gosh, you guys are good. Anybody over here interested in this Utah snow globe? It's about the size of your fist. You can see there's a penny right here. Anybody? Anybody?
Is it a snow globe or a dust globe?
It's a snow globe. Well, I guess it is technically a dust globe. Okay. So before I tell you more about the cost of this snow globe, I want to tell you a story about its background. Just so you know, the original price of this snow globe bought was 99 cents. It's basically an insignificant object when you think about it. But listen to this story. My granddad's granddad had a box under his bed. If you go to open the box, you had to beg, you would find a little door. The little door had a combination on it that you had to know to get inside the second box, which I did. I had the combination tattooed on my spine meat when I was 4 while on a trip to see the circus. The tattoo was free. My granddad's granddad was very powerful and rich. My granddad's granddad in the bed asleep above me. I opened up the box inside the box. My knees were bloody from the begging. I could see way down into the box. There was a black pattern, then a ladder. I fell forward and grabbed a hold. The inside of the box smelled like the backyard where the money got made from skin. I began to climb along the ladder, getting older every rung. I was a very special boy. The room under my granddad's room was octagon-shaped. As I climbed into the room, the mouth to it closed. The walls along the room were lined with little cubbies. There were more cubbies than I have days I've lived or hairs that I've grown, which is also more than how many mouths I'd put my mouth against if I'd lived to be very, very old. In each of the cubbies was a little globe. Each globe held another little thing, each named with a label for what was that thing. There was a cubby with a globe containing first ever redwood tree, one containing Perry Mason, and Perry Mason was very pissed. And the story goes on and on. It's actually kind of an odd story, but in the end, he lifts up the snow globe, and it says, to my great-grandson. And so it's him. So it was there all along. The point of this is that after the story was put with this item, it was sold for $59. And this was an anthropological study that was done over using 200 insignificant objects where they combined an object with a story to see how much people would pay for them. Now, it wasn't a hoax. It was actually done, and the people who bid on them on eBay said that this artist has written a story, the backstory of this. There was one that was a flannel ball that went into hell. There was another one that had a little icon that turned somebody into a goat. I mean, these were bizarre stories. But the point was the stories added value. They added value to what seemed to be an insignificant object. And part of that is because of the emotional connection that people had with that story for whatever reason. Obviously, not everybody's going to buy a snow globe that's sitting next to a very angry Perry Mason. So stories sell, period. The film industry is $29 billion. Video games, $22 billion. Books of fiction, $28 billion industry. Financial publishing, $1 billion and growing. We all want to be a part of that, right? Why? Why do stories sell? The reality is our brains actually crave stories. Do you have bullet points, lists, reams of data? We've seen a lot of that, and there's nothing against any of the presentations that have gone on here today at all. But if you're out from a copywriter's position and you're selling something with lots of lists and data, etc., boring. Why? Because the brain's language center turns that into meaning, but that's it. You take some meaning away from the data, the lists, etc., you walk away going, oh, that was nice. But when you add a story, you tap right into what our brains crave. You see, we daydream approximately 2,000 times per day. They average about 14 seconds. And after reading this, I found myself catching myself daydreaming. Just for a few seconds here and there, I'd think about something, the dog at the house and this and that, you're throwing the frisbee, whatever it is. I didn't realize that we actually daydream that much. And then what do? We dream all night long. We live in stories in our head. It's how we process information. It's how we get meaning to our life. It's how we identify ourselves. It's where we find our values. It's literally how we live our lives. And new studies actually show that stories alter our brains and change the way we think and act. As a matter of fact, a good story will change everything. Stories actually create sensory experiences. Again, this goes back to your brain will, the language center dealing with data and lists, etc. But your brain will actually fire off when given a story as if you were in the story yourself. I thought this was really interesting. Again, the language center gives meaning to that data, but when you add fear, the amygdala center of the brain elevates your heart rate. The next thing you know, you're going, wait a minute, I'm starting to sweat a little bit, something's here, is it somebody stalking me? Is it fear of loss? What's going on here as you're reading this story? The greed center, another part of the brain, elicits pleasure. You start to get these pleasurable feelings. I'm gonna be a millionaire. I'm gonna, have everything that I've ever wanted. When you go and see a movie, you actually start to see yourself in the character that you identify with in the movie. That's the power of story. Professor Uri Hassan at Princeton University said, by simply telling a story, these are in his studies, you can plant ideas, thoughts, and emotions into the listener's brain. Think about that. Data, lists, we deal in financial publishing. That's charts, it's data, information, numbers, which can come off very boring, especially to the uninitiated. But when you wrap that in a story that people can't get away from, that they identify with, then you're actually planting something in their brain that they want to grab a hold of. We heard it talked about earlier, the difference between a need and a want. It goes from, I hear this all the time. Nobody wants a newsletter. Nobody wants a financial publication. They don't. They want the lifestyle that the wealth achieved from all of that trading and information will give them. They don't actually want the newsletter. So we have to take something that people don't even think about, make it so interesting and compelling that they feel that they need it because you've triggered it in their brain. I have to have that. I have to have that information. So let's talk about your story, okay? But before I do that, I want to give you a little bit of my story and how I got here. I didn't actually start out as a copywriter. I'm actually a very neophyte copywriter. I've only been doing this for about 4 or 5 years. But I've been in the financial industry for over 20 years. I used to sell private placements. I was a stockbroker. I did venture capital. I worked at a small investment banking shop. And then I had this wild idea that I'm going to start my own hedge fund. I said, well, I want to put the money in. I want to have this residual value, create value for other people. I had always been on the transaction side of the business, so I'm going to build a fund and basically live out my retirement years managing money, et cetera. So all was going well. I gathered together friends and family and built the infrastructure for a multifaceted, multi-asset fund. I had managers. I had interviewed about 600 different financial managers with a cumulative assets under management of a little over $3 billion. And I went to them with a model that I'm going to build this hedge fund working with institutional investors where you're going to split your fees with me. If you know in the hedge fund world, that's 2 and 20. So instead of being a feeder fund or a fund of funds where I would get another 10% on top of that, so it would be 3 and 30 to the investor, I said, if you'll split the money with me, I'll bring in the money and we'll manage, basically co-manage. They would pull the trade, the trades and the signals and do everything that they did. I would help to manage the relationships. That's just, where I was in the financial space. So spent all this money, $2.8 million, building incredible infrastructure, onshore, offshore, and then 2007 came. And $20 million that we had committed from overseas investors from Denmark was in the very first bank that has ever failed in the country of Denmark, ever. So I went from 5 to 6 years of flying all over the world, meeting with investors, buying expensive bottles of wine, dinner, et cetera, just to get $1 million commitment, a $5 million commitment, a $10 million commitment, to come in and invest with us, building trust and all of those things, to seeing everything completely wiped out in the span of maybe a few months. Literally, I was devastated. I got to the point where my wife came in and she said, I don't care if you go work in a grocery store or whatever, you got to feed the family, because I lost everything, lost all of my money, my friends, my family money, everything. So here I am. The next thing I know, I find myself, I'm laying on my office floor, in my home office, literally crying out, God, what am I going to do? And I see this ad for a financial analyst at a publishing firm. So I go, well, I don't really want to be a financial analyst. Yes, I have an MBA. Yes, I know enough about finance to be dangerous, but numbers aren't my thing. I'm more of a creative person. I'm a story guy. I'm a sales guy. I'm a relationship guy. So I go, and they say, when I go to meet with them, they say, we're really not that keen on having too many more financial analysts, but we do need a copywriter. And I go, what's that? Literally, my first question was, so I went on the internet and I found out, what's a copywriter? Next thing you know, they give me a shot at it. I call my dad on the phone, and I go, Dad, they're paying me like 20% of what I used to make. How am I going to feed my family? He says, 100% more than you're making right now, so shut up and take the job. So I did. And I did whatever they told me to do. They told me to write emails. I wrote emails. I took 20 years of my financial knowledge in the sales space. I started putting it on paper. I started reading every book that I could. John Caples, all of the classics. Whatever it was that I knew from a salesman's perspective that could get somebody to give me $20 million, when they told me that I could put it down on a piece of paper and have 10 million people look at it and it wouldn't cost me hardly a penny, no flying around, no expensive bottles of wine, I was in. And so I started learning more and more from other copywriters. You know, one thing about copywriters is they share their own stories, their battle plans, how they've gone out there, what's worked, what's not worked. You've heard a lot of that here today. So part of my journey has been going from the person that I was in the financial industry who was great at building amazing product, but a total failure at marketing, total failure, to getting the opportunity to write one of the biggest packages that's run in the last 3 to 4 years, with about 8,500 subscribers and over right around 9 million in sales, and it's still running now 3 years later. But had I known that, I would have loved to have known that before losing everything. But had I known that, my journey might be a little bit different. But the point is that we all go through our own journey. However you've gotten in here, we've heard it several times today. It's about that pivot. You come to a point in your life where you have to make that pivot. And I made a pivot from being the CEO of a company, running all over the world, chasing after what I thought to be the right way to market a fund, to now becoming a writer and sitting in my, well, I don't sit in bunny slippers, but you get the message. Sitting at home on my computer and creating stories that start to engage people's brains and create a completely different dialogue than I did when I was face-to-face as a hedge fund manager. So let's talk about your story. Now you know a little bit about me. You are on a journey. You only care about one thing. You. You don't care about me. I don't take it personal. Or what I have to say, unless I can give you something that you can use on your journey. That's why I'm here today, is to share my journey with you. And is there some tool, anything that I can do that can help you tell better stories, create a connection with your customers, your clients in a way that will, one, increase your sales and help you grow along in your journey. So 5 things great stories need. Great stories need a hero. Every story needs a hero. But good stories are always about someone. It's not about you, your guru, your trading system, or anything else. It's about the customer. Because the hero is the one who is transformed in the story. You're the guru. You're the one with the trading system. You've already been transformed. I was the hedge fund manager, lost it all, transformed into a copywriter. I'm not the hero today. You guys are the hero. You're on your journey. And you need to see your customer as the hero in the story. They are always the hero. The second thing you need is you need a goal. What transformation is your customer or your hero seeking? What is the transformation that they need to make in their life to get from where they are today, never having met you before, never knowing anything about you, your system, your abilities, etc.? Where are you going to translate them from where they are today to where they're going? What is that transformation that they need? Is it a better life? Is it more money? Is it retirement? You have to, we heard it here in some of the other prior presentations about really getting into the mind of your customer. That avatar, I believe it was Jeremy who spoke about. Getting in and knowing your customer. What is the transformation that they need to do? I find this all the time when we're trying to tell people about our trading systems. We're trying to tell them about all the cool stuff that we have, and look what it does, and it does this, and it manages risk, and it does it, and make you money. And it's all talking about yourself. You're making yourself the hero. You're not. You're the mentor, and I'm going to get to that in just a moment. So where do they want to go? What will they look like when they get there? The goal here, as you go through this transformation, is to make your customer a better version of themselves. So where they are today, you're going to help them translate through the stories that you're telling. You also need an obstacle, number 3. If transformations were easy, your customer wouldn't need you. There has to be something that your customer has to overcome. What are the obstacles that are keeping them from getting to the goal that they have? Obstacles are in the gap between where your hero is today and where they want to be. They're often external. I don't have enough money. I work too hard. I don't get to spend time. But the hardest ones are the internal ones. I'm scared. I'm going to lose everything if I do this. How many of them are sitting on go, but they're too scared to take that next step? You have to give them the confidence to overcome all of the obstacles that they think or even imagine in their mind. And you have to do that through telling an effective story. Imagine what's keeping your customer from getting to their goal and what's standing in their way. And when you do that, make sure that you're creating a narrative that helps them to overcome that. Give them examples of other people in the same situation, not yourself. Remember, you're not the hero. You're not there to talk about yourself. I've done this many times in copy where you want to make the guru credible. So, they've been on CNBC and, they palled around with, Jim Rogers, and they've done all of these things, and, they hang out with Richard Branson in his balloon and fly all over, whatever it is. But then somewhere you need to insert in there while you're elevating the guru and go, but this is not about me. This is about you. Remember, who's the hero in the story? It's not the guru. It's not the system. It's the customer. It's the person reading. So, number 4, you need a mentor. Now you get to talk about yourself. The customer is Luke Skywalker, and you are Obi-Wan Kenobi. That's just how it works. You want them to, 1, learn how to use the Force, get good at using the Force, and use the Force to defeat the obstacles, Darth Vader, etc., overcome make the rebellion, overtake everything that they need to do so they can live happily ever after in the universe. That's your job. You have the information the hero needs to get to their goal. But you're not going to do it all for them. If you, in your copy or when you're telling them, this is so easy, you could fall off a log backwards and make money doing what we're doing, you're patronizing the customer. Because the reality is, transformation is hard. It's difficult. It's not just about the fact that they're going to overcome the mental obstacle that they have or the external obstacle that they have. They still, at the end of the day, you're going to ask them to take an action. So if the whole time you're telling them, oh, this is so easy, you're going to make millions, you're going to have this, you're not really, you have to make sure that you're not putting it out there that you're going to do it all for them. No, you're going to have to show up, you're going to have to do the work, you're going to have to read the material. I remember one time somebody was talking about Tony Robbins earlier. I remember hearing in one of his tapes or something that only 3% of the people who buy self-help tapes like that and other things like that actually open them and listen to them, much less do them to completion. Only 3%. So you don't want to, in your copy, make it so easy like it's falling off a log that they don't have to do anything, because I tell you what, they're probably going to refund after the fact that they realize it, and then they have to show up and actually, I have to open a brokerage account, or where I had a brokerage account, I've never had an option account, I never even know to ask for an option account, whatever it is. Make sense? The hero's journey takes effort and work, and you're there only to guide them through. So what's the 5th thing that a great story needs? You need a moral. After you've shown your hero how to overcome obstacles to obtain their goal, you want to show them how they become a better version of themselves, and circle back and explicitly lay out what they need to do next. So again, you've laid out, these are the obstacles you have to overcome. Look, the stock market is a wild place. However, when you look at the information that I have and how I'm teaching you or showing you, these are the trading mechanisms I use, or these are the, the fundamental analysis that I do, or the technical analysis that I do, it's not as scary out there. So you're helping them mentally to overcome that. But then you have to lay it back out. This is what I need you to do. This gets back around to the offer, where you're literally, one, going to get to the point where you ask them to buy, to join you, join the force, join the rebellion, and take over the world, or whatever it is that your call to action is doing, but you want to circle back around and give them a moral to the story. So let's look at, they can only overcome if they take action. So the Biblical Money Code was a promo that I wrote with about 85,000 customer heroes that bought. The hero here was newer investors or scarred investors. And I call them scarred investors because they either lost in 2001 and they stayed out of the market, or they did real estate and they were in real estate and then they lost in that. It's just one thing after another. It's like they were the epitome of buying high and getting crushed and selling low. And so people get fearful and they're scarred and they don't want to go back out there. Because another thing that I think is very important is that not only is it the fear of loss, but it's also the fear of looking like a fool. I went back out there and I did it again and I failed. So one of the things that you want to do as the hero, or to help the hero as the mentor, is to show them that you're going to be there, you're going to hold their hand, not do the work for them, but you're going to be there to coach them through the entire process of transforming from where they are now, the ordinary world is what comes from the hero's journey, to this new world that is this transformative world of the life that they say that they want, or that they've at least expressed interest in what they want. The goal was getting wealthy the right way for the right reasons. It was stewarding over your investments. That was the goal that we believed people who would buy through the Biblical Money Code. They wanted to be good stewards over their investments. And one of the things that we talked about in the obstacles that we had there was the financial sin. And the financial sin, if you look at greed, that's the inordinate desire for gain. Gotta have it. It's covetousness. I need that Lamborghini, and I'm going to do whatever I got to do to get that Lamborghini, or I need that second vacation, whatever it is, this greedy I must have, or, it's almost like the addiction to more. It's just to the point where it's ruining people and they're taking risks that they never should be taking because they're swinging for the fences. That's one side of the financial sin coin. The other side was paralyzing fear of loss. So they're so fearful that they might lose something that they never do anything, which is more often the case with a lot of the people, especially from the general public, those that are looking at becoming self-directed investors for the first time. It's that fear of loss. So those were a couple of the obstacles that we, one, a lot of people didn't even know that they had these obstacles. Remember, they're internal sometimes. They're not, they can look in their checkbook and go, I don't have any money to buy your product. But a lot of times people don't want to look in the mirror and say, I have this internal obstacle that I'm way too scared to even think about buying your product. So we address that in the copy, and I think that's a good thing to do, is to, again, show those obstacles. What are those obstacles that you need to overcome? And then help them see that not only can they overcome it, but show other people overcoming it. Not just you, the hero, but how have you helped other people do the same thing? That's where testimonials come in. The mentor was a former pastor. Now, this is just kind of cool because when I started writing for Newsmax and the publisher there, the publisher came to me with the idea that, hey, I'd like to do something biblical financial, kind of like Dave Ramsey, only on the investing side. Instead of, how do we make sure that you get out of debt, we want to help you grow your money. So how do we go about doing that? Well, it turned out that the guru that we had was actually a former pastor who had gone from making $15,000 a year as an associate youth pastor to actually giving away $50,000 a year as a successful investor. So we had the perfect mix. Now, where does this apply to you and your gurus and the people that you have in your products or that you're marketing with? What is that intrinsic part of the mentor or the guru that you have that nobody else has seen or is not being talked about? Yes, they've made a lot of money. Yes, they've had a lot of success. Where have they failed? Where have they done something that needs to be brought to the front that, one, makes them human, but also makes them something that the customer or the client can identify with? Remember, in a good story, we identify with characters that are much like ourselves. There's something inside that character we like, that we identify with. That's what you want in your copy, is you want things that are going to cause the customer to identify with that. So having them, being a former pastor who literally, who lives on $15,000 a year? Nobody, that's below the poverty level line. I'm not sure, I don't know the data on that, but that's not a lot of money. So to go from that person has the external, obstacle in their head, I don't have enough money, I can't start investing. Well, he went from having nothing to actually being in a position to where he was giving away $50,000. If he was just tithing, then he was making $500,000 a year, 10% of your money. So, and it was neat because we could turn that in the copy to go from being basically not an investor to a philanthropist. That was actually taking it that one step further, that we're going to go past greed. Yes, it's okay to make money, but it's okay to make so much money that you can actually start giving it away and helping other people out. And what was the moral? The sin of inaction is as big as the sin of greed. So we actually had in the copy there that, look, it's one thing to be greedy, we get that. But also, in the parable of the talents, Jesus came and told the story of the master who went away on a journey. He gave these talents, and talents were a form of money. I believe it was a year's wages. So think about it, a year's wages if the average household's $50,000. So I come to you, I give you 10, you've got 500 grand. So the one servant goes and takes this talent and turns it into twice as much. The other one went and took his talent and turned it into twice as much. But the third servant went and buried his one talent in the ground. And what happened is that when the master came back, he said, I was so fearful of losing it because I knew you were a hard master that I just buried it here and now it's safe. And then the master actually banished him and said, be gone from me, you wicked, unfaithful servant. So really what we were doing is we were opening people's eyes to the fact that that obstacle of sitting on the sidelines in fear is just as bad as trying to swing for the fences and doing whatever it takes and just throwing money at the wind to try and get that greedy gain, if you will. So what's the moral of this story, the presentation today? It's always about the customer hero. They are always the hero of the story. So when you're writing copy or when you're working with copywriters, make sure that they're making the customer the hero of the story. Show the hero becoming a better version of themselves as they reach that goal. You want to show them what their life is going to look like. Be descriptive. Is it a vacation house? Is it a house on the beach? Is it a bright, shiny sports car? Is it paying your kids' college without having debt? Who knows? Depending upon who you're trying to reach and what your target audience is, paint that picture for them. Don't just give them the data about what it can do for them. Show them the better version of themselves. Show how the customer can overcome external and internal obstacles. Again, you're going to use explanations. You're going to use specific examples of overcoming fear. Testimonials are great when you can show someone else actually doing that, because then they can begin to identify with that. Show how you can help them navigate the path to the goal. This is where you bring the mentor back in and you're going to show them, look, I've done this for thousands of people. Obviously, if you have a lot of subscribers and they're happy, you want to put that out there that I'm helping all of these people do it, live their lives, live their dreams. You want to bring that back around and I can show you just as well. And then spell out clearly what you want them to do next. Be clear with the offer. Remember, I believe you were talking about asking. You have to ask. Ask them to buy. Ask them exactly what it is that you want them to do. And then if you've done it successfully from the standpoint of helping them overcome mentally those obstacles in their head, then they should become buyers. And you'll be in a position where you'll have a promo that continues to bring in clients. And so if anything, whether you're writing copy or working with copywriters, keep these things in mind, that you want to basically transform this person from where they are now to where you want them to be. They are the hero. You're Obi-Wan Kenobi to their Luke Skywalker, and you want to basically take them across the threshold to get them to the life that they want to live. Hemingway actually wrote a complete short story in 6 words. You've heard this? It's for sale, baby shoes never worn. Yeah, I don't know if you want to be that, morose, or however you look at that story. I mean, it could be that, the baby's feet were bigger. I don't know. The excuse me. The point is that I think you can be creative. Obviously, every story needs a beginning, middle, and an end. The other thing that I found, it's funny because the first publisher I came in, they were into big, long emails. I mean, the promo was almost like they put the whole promo in the email and then sent you to the promo. And as I worked with different publishers, I found that very, very short emails that send you to the promo, the shorter you can get them, very pithy, to the point, move them directly there. If you can get their attention over there and then get them reading, then you have all the forum you need to get them across that story that you want. Does that make sense, or is that helpful? Be very clear with how the guru, the mentor of the story, their own hero's journey. I talked a little bit about my journey getting to copywriting. You know what I mean? It's taken me a while to do this, to get here, but it's possible. So everyone in here, if you follow these rules, you can go out tomorrow and start writing better stuff, even if you're not a copywriter. Because one, you're taking one new nugget with you, and all you have to do is what? Take action, because you have to do some of the work. So from a timing perspective, I think if you're clear on how the guru was over here. See, a lot of times when we see a guru, we think they're perfect. You know what I mean? They've never had a trouble. And even if they had a trouble, it was a small trouble. You know what I mean? And they overcame it so quickly because they had the money and the beautiful wife and the perfect kids and the big house. And, we always think that the guru was able to overcome that because they have this secret. The reality is that they've struggled and gone through all of their own obstacles to get to where. So I think the more humble you are and transparent you are from the guru's perspective, it will begin to plant that in their mind that, hey, there is a lot of work here. But then again, you turn it back around, but I've done a lot of the work already for you. All you have to do is start by showing up. And as you start to show up by buying my product, then I'm going to coach you through this. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, great. Anybody else? I know we're late, getting late. Nobody has a plane to catch immediately, so yes.
Is there a place we can see the Bible code from?
It's still there. If you just Google Newsmax Bible Code, I think it's on YouTube, or you can see the whole thing there. So thanks very much. Okay, great. Thanks for having me. Okay.